Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be unpacking a deeply personal and honestly a beautifully comforting metaphor from our source text today. I want you to just imagine for a second the divine not as some distant, untouchable force way up in the sky, but as an incredibly patient visitor standing right at the threshold of your life. It's a pretty striking visual, isn't it? We're going to explore exactly what this means, why that door might be closed in the first place, and how the simplest, quietest invitation might just change the whole shebang.
You know, we so often carry around this heavy cultural baggage that tells us a deity is demanding, constantly keeping a tally of our flaws, requiring us to perfectly clean up our act before we can even think about approaching. But what if that's completely backward? What if, as our source suggests, the divine is just waiting on your porch? No demands, no clipboards ticking boxes, just waiting for a simple invitation.
Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1. The Visitor on the Porch.
Imagine the entrance to your life has a physical gate. It's a sturdy door, but it's got a very specific kind of hardware. It has a hinge that only opens from the inside. The visitor on the outside has immense power, sure, yet they absolutely refuse to use it to force entry. There's this quote directly from the text that is just so powerful. I am simply here on the outside of a hinge that only opens from your side. This visitor hasn't brought a battering ram, they haven't picked your lock or slipped a spare key under the frame while you were sleeping. Instead, there's just this profound tenderness. The text is speaking directly to those of us who are weary, or maybe even a little embarrassed by how long it's taken to walk down the hallway of our own lives. The visitor, they're simply waiting.
That brings us to part 2, the noise and the wounds. If there's this loving visitor on the porch, why on earth is the door closed to begin with?
Well, the fear of opening that door didn't just appear out of nowhere, right? It was assembled inside you by life itself. Maybe it started when a trusted voice forced its way in and broke something fragile. Or maybe a guest you willingly welcomed turned out to be a thief of your peace. For a lot of people, it came from religious teachers who framed the divine corridor with these velvet ropes and secret passwords, making you feel excluded on a technicality. Or actually, maybe it was a promised forever that turned out to be a very, very tiny word, or opportunities that just slam shut right in your face. These past passages leave small wounds, and those wounds constantly whisper, "Do not open."
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it contrasts the false noise so many of us were handed with the true voice of this visitor. We're sort of conditioned to expect an angry judge who demands a polished, immaculate home. But the text reveals a true presence that actually prefers an honest, tired table. They love messy kitchens with crumbs left out and mismatched chairs. They literally aren't checking your welcome mat for fingerprints. They require only a whisper.
The source text paints another really gorgeous image of this dynamic. The divine waits eagerly, but gently. Think of a friend waiting at the airport watching every single face come through that arrival gate, holding a bouquet of flowers. Or a mother who absolutely refuses to leave the front window until she sees her kids step off a late school bus. This is not the bitter, annoyed waiting of a creditor tapping their foot. It is the eager, unyielding patience of love.
All right, Part 3. Decoding Revelation 3:20. Let's examine a historical note that was slipped under this metaphorical door centuries ago, addressed to people exactly like us.
So this note was sent to a community in a town called Laodicea. Now, Laodicea wasn't some scandalous, wicked, rebellious place. It was comfortable. They had a booming wool industry, they manufactured eye medicine, they had a really robust banking system. Their faith hadn't gone up in flames or anything, it had just kind of become distracted. It was neither hot nor cold. This letter was written for busy, comfortable people whose faith was just humming along in the background on an ordinary Wednesday. And inside that note to Laodicea is this incredibly famous verse, Revelation 3:20. "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him and he with me." It's a sense you've probably heard before, but I invite you to just slow your eyes across each syllable alongside me to uncover the hidden meanings tucked inside.
First up, look at the verb, I stand. The source emphasizes that this is present continuous. It's an unbroken standing. The standing hasn't paused through your doubts, through your failures, or even through the years you might have stepped entirely away. The visitor has been on their feet at your entry the entire time.
Next, I knock. As we covered, this isn't a battering ram. It's not the kick of a soldier. It's a polite, patient sound. And the text notes that this gentle knock often arrives in small things. Maybe it's a song on the radio right when you were feeling down, or a random memory of kindness. Or sometimes trouble, like grief or a sudden diagnosis. Cracks open a sealed chamber inside you, and suddenly, through that crack, the knock becomes audible. Trouble isn't the knock itself, but it's often what lets you finally hear it.
If anyone, talk about radical inclusion. It's wide enough to include you exactly as you are right now. The tired version of you, the half-believing version of you, right in the messy middle of your real life. Anyone literally means anyone. And opens. Now here's the small mystery at the center of it all. Love does not break down doors. Because love that forces its way in, that's not love, that's conquest. The divine doesn't want to conquer your life, it wants to share it. So it respects your agency completely and waits for the invitation. Finally, eat with him. Back in the ancient world, sharing a meal wasn't just grabbing a quick bite on the go. It was the ultimate sign of full, intimate friendship. The visitor isn't knocking to start some cold transaction. They are knocking for mutual celebration, an exchange where you bring your honest, tired self and the divine brings the bread of life. Moving into our final section, Part 4, the practice of opening. How do we take this poetic metaphor and bring it into actionable reality for, say, the next 7 days?
Well, the text offers 3 gentle, incredibly low steps for engaging this presence. First, tip the latch slightly. Second, expect quiet, not fireworks. And third, simply remember those closed passages. You really don't have to fling the doors wide open and let the wind howl through your house.
Consider what a gentle opening actually looks like. A yes to this visitor doesn't have to be loud, it doesn't have to be eloquent, or even a permanent commitment right off the bat. Just cracking the latch by the width of a finger is enough. It can literally be a single breath of consent where your shoulders drop an inch. It can be muttering "come in" to an empty kitchen while making coffee. It can just be laying your palm against the wood of a closed memory in your mind. The smallest opening is absolutely enough for the visitor to start sharing the space. And this brilliantly illustrates that transformation is a process. It requires a timeline of trying. Do not expect lightning bolts on attempt 1. On your first try, you might just feel a quiet unclenching in your chest. But keep going. Around the 30th try, you might notice the chamber behind the wood has silently warmed. Around the 50th try, you realize the meal you thought you were eating alone has secretly been a shared meal. And around the 100th try, you realize the entry isn't even an entry anymore. It just stays permanently open. It takes multiple gentle tries, and you know what? That is perfectly okay.
So I'll leave you with this provocative thought right from the text. The hand on the door is mine. The choice is yours. I want you to think about the closed doors in your own life. Those latches you've been a little too afraid to touch. The visitor is there, patiently waiting like a friend with flowers at the airport. The question isn't whether they will knock. The question is, will you whisper yes?